Good afternoon. I'm Molly Jensen. This is Shelley. We're both currently board members for Your Media, which is the service provider for Fayetteville Public Access Television station. And today we're going to talk to you about nonprofit social videos. So we appreciate you guys taking your time to come down here this afternoon. I think I speak for both of us when we say please feel free to ask questions. This is being recorded and you guys aren't on camera, so we'll probably repeat your question, so that will be kind of a little oddity that will happen, but I think we should repeat your question.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, so, but please feel free to stop us at any point. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the power of videos and social videos now in our in society and kind of where we are.
Would you like to give some of your background and the work you do with
sure.
nonprofits?
So I am a faculty member in the marketing department at the University of Arkansas, and my interest is in nonprofit organization and health, and so that's what I do. I'm interested in helping nonprofits organize, helping them improve their marketing plans, doing outreach, things like this, helping them learn how to function on their own and just be better organized from a business aspect.
And if I could interject, Molly leads a sort of lunch group at the Fayetteville Public Library for nonprofits to come together and talk about issues that are of interest or concern as we work as nonprofit staff to better our work and forward our missions. Sometimes it's best to learn from each other instead of having to be out there all on your own. I've known Molly for several years, and she has guided my nonprofit organizations, first at Just Communities of Northwest Arkansas and then at Your Media, through 2 different rebrandings and renamings, and helping us to do marketing and reach out to get more folks interested in our mission. So I'm particularly thrilled that she would be willing to sit here with you all today. She's a great resource if you have any questions beyond this. But going through a name change is always hard, and making that something that it works through, that the organization works through and thrives afterwards, is even harder, and Molly certainly helped with that. So I just wanted to sing your praises.
Thanks. So the Fridays, it's the 3rd Friday of the month at the library at 12:30, and it's a brown bag lunch and learn. And the goal is for it to be self-supporting, self-sustaining, so nonprofits get together and talk amongst themselves. And currently it's January through May, and then the library is going to reevaluate. So another great Fayetteville resource. So today we're just going to talk a little bit about social videos and the power and strength of them to be used by you as nonprofits. So we're just going to do the top 5 reasons. There are a Google search or a Bing search away, a million different tidbits of information and things that you can get, but what I find is sometimes that's just overwhelming because there's almost too much. So these are just a few of the reasons that for-profits as well are moving to social videos, which I think should be a place that we as nonprofits look to as a guide for what to do in terms of outreach. So social videos have fundamentally changed the face of marketing or advertising, and in a nonprofit case we call that outreach. When you think about a 30-second commercial, which is just a video, right? Most of us in my household, we just hit the mute button, or if you have a DVR or a TiVo or something, you fast forward through them. So we're really morphing from this commercial that we're all wishing would just go away to something that is a video content that we're willingly sharing with our friends. And this is really a substantial change. Of course, with the advent of Facebook and Twitter and all those things, that's helped us quite a bit. YouTube obviously is huge. There are currently in the neighborhood of 900 million Facebook users and 555 million Twitter users. There are other forms of social media. Those are 2 I would recommend that you get involved with. The good news about social videos is that you now can compete with for-profits on a level playing field in terms of viral and getting your stuff out there. The bad news is you're now playing on an even field with for-profits. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Invisible Children organization. It's based in Africa, and there's a guy, Coney, who's stealing children and doing all these things. And they made a video that went viral last spring, and it was the first ever video made by a nonprofit that went viral and was bigger than for-profit videos. And it reached more people than are combined on Facebook and Twitter. It reached, I don't know, it was something like 1.8 billion or something. So had views. It was some just unbelievable number. Now they have a fairly big machine behind them, and they have this really compelling story, which we'll talk about. But it's really depressing. But it's a really great example of you have a story to tell. We have the passion to tell it, and given the right format, you can really reach a huge audience.
And I think for nonprofits, I don't know the size of your nonprofits, but even 100 more hits or 100 more potential donors make this so much important. It's a very important return on investment, especially when you can do it for free here. So.
Right. So one of the things that we find is that the stronger the emotions in the video, the more it's shared. This goes with the good, the bad, and the ugly. So you want to avoid like just horrifying shock value, like, there's some, well, you can imagine horrifying things. I don't need to speak them. But think of the Coney video. I mean, this is a video about a guy who's stealing children. He's feeding them awful things. He's making it so that they're warriors. I mean, he's doing horrible things. It's this gut-wrenching video. And yet it got shared so much. So one of the powers of social video is that you have the ability to tell this story. And as nonprofits, we have great emotional stories to tell. I mean, just sitting here now telling me about the after-school programs and what these kids are getting to do after school to do their homework so that they can go home and have quality time with their moms and their dads and wherever they are, and not have the stress of finding an adult to help them, right? So that's a really great story. That's a really moving story. And I know you guys at the community clinic, you just had your 100,000 patient, and that hit Twitter and that hit Facebook, and you had a picture of the person, and that's a really compelling story. And so we as nonprofits, that's one of the things that we have that for-profits don't have. Frequently their stories are fairly contrived, right? They have to come up with this mom who bought some name brand product that they put this huge marketing engine behind, and so it's a really, I feel like nonprofits have a way to genuinely use social media in a way that for-profits don't.
Oh, I'm sorry, if I could
Nope.
interject too. As
Yep.
you probably know, people decide whether or not they're going to donate to your nonprofit based on their emotions. They decide how much based on their logic. So if you can't hit them on an emotional level, then you're never going to get to their logical decision of how much. And this is the first generation, not me, I'm a little older, in case you didn't notice, but the first generation that's a completely visual generation. Molly and I are about the same age. We were considered part of the print generation, where we grew up with magazines, that's how we got our information, but now it's completely visual. So if you want to nurture a new generation of donors, having those emotional stories and being able to tell them is so important, and there's no better way to do that than to do it via video, where you're actually seeing the human faces and hearing the human stories that donor dollar is relating to.
Right.
And it's just extremely powerful. And I'm going to sound like an infomercial, and that you could do it all for free here in Fayetteville is pretty incredible. So.
Okay, so emotions are important, right? And you don't have to avoid the negative emotions. So obviously positive emotions are helpful, but you definitely do not have to avoid the negative. You do want to avoid just the gross and the completely horrific. You don't want to be, you don't want to go overboard. But there's a lot of really great advertising out there that's not, an outreach that's not positive. Number 3, people will like your nonprofit organization more if the video is received from a friend. So this speaks to social videos, the social aspect of social media. What we find is that in the for-profit realm, brand favorability, so if we just go and say, how do you feel about brand X or brand Y? If people have received a video about that brand from a friend, the favorability goes up 57%. So if organizations can get people to share the videos, and this speaks to another issue of trust, which we'll talk about on the next slide, then you're going to have greater investment in your nonprofit. And it might be emotional investment, it might be money investment, right? Viewers are more likely to recall your organizational name and engage with the message if the video was shared with them. So yet another reason. So Tyler's like, hey, this is really great. I can't believe it. Look at what they're doing at the animal shelter, and sends you a video about puppies, right? And then you are so much more likely to remember the animal shelter, remember the message that they're giving. Again, speaking to what Anne's saying about the visual nature of this generation.
And
yeah, go.
The other thing that I really think, if you're from sort of the old school way of, remember when we used to try to have these huge events for nonprofits, like that was the number one fund. Everybody thought that was the best way to raise money and get the word out. And not a whole lot of those are done anymore because, as we've learned, they cost too much time, energy, and money. But the whole goal was you would get a well-known person, and they would be either the MC or the host or the chair of the event. And not that this is going to take the place of those, but just like you said, you got here because someone sent you an email. This is sort of taking the place as a free way for you to use that name recognition, but have those people open an email or watch a video instead of all the expense and time and energy is to organize people in this crazy day and age. I'm not a huge YouTube junkie like so many people that I know are, but I rely heavily, if somebody sends me a YouTube video by email, I always watch it just because I know them, I trust them, and it gets my attention. So I think it's an amazing way to cut some costs really in your nonprofit by asking those well-known people or those community leaders, hey, would you send this out to everyone that you know? And have that video be something that's powerful emotionally. And guess what? You can do it for free here. Sorry.
That's the buzzword of the day.
So number 4, this speaks again to the power of what's going on in terms of the changing face of advertisement and outreach. In a recent survey, 3/4 of the nonprofits that were, 3/4 of the for-profits, right? So the big people who are out there to get you to buy their things for whatever reason, they answered that they were migrating a significantly larger portion of their advertising budget to social video and social media. So they're beginning to, they see the value in it as well. I mean, it's not something that's going to go away. Is it going to change? Absolutely, right? But I think that this kind of communication is going to be only stronger. Now, we're still going to have to figure out how to cut through the clutter. And some of that is just sheer dumb luck, but you can't cut through the clutter if you don't try, right? And so at some point you got to just get out there, and you have to try to create these stories that resonate on an emotional level with people. And at some point, one of those will go viral, right? Somebody will send it to a friend, and it's important to, I think, jump in the game. Right? And for-profits are starting to fight for your same dollars. Okay, so that's important. So studies show that people trust social videos more than TV, which I think is just really bizarre to me. But speaking to the change in generation, people born after the mid-60s, so into the late 60s and early 70s, from that point on, what is typically referred to as Gen X and Gen Y, right? These are people who are four times more likely to seek a peer or a friend for advice over an expert. And when I say a peer, I don't mean someone they know. I mean the 400,000 other people that gave something 5 stars on the Amazon or the YouTube webpage. So now, is there some wisdom in that? Absolutely. You know, as the older generation made some mistakes following experts who really weren't experts and we just believed them because they were, absolutely. But there's just this whole shift that if 4 million people think that's a good thing, it must be a good thing, right? And there's a kind of a loss of skepticism in this. It's almost like a massive groupthink in some ways sometimes. There is some evidence, though, that many people weighing in will create an accurate opinion, which is the nature of Wikipedia, right? That's how, when Wikipedia first started, if my students quoted Wikipedia, I just read them the riot act. But now it's been a good 5-6 years, enough experts have weighed in, it's self-corrected, that it's actually a viable resource for good information. So there is some wisdom to that, right? So this crowdsourcing for information. So people are trusting videos that they're receiving, like you said, from an email from a friend way more. Here's the thing. Nonprofits, we own the corner market on trust. You're far more likely to be trusted than a for-profit if you send a message out. So if you send a message out and it's sent to a friend, then the friend has the trust that they have in their friend, plus the trust that it's a nonprofit. Now, of course, there's bad nonprofits out. I mean, not us, but there are people out there. I just read a story about a woman who bilked a bunch of people out of money, pretending like she was helping people with Hurricane Sandy. So I mean, there's bad stuff out there, but by and large, people who do nonprofit work do good work, and they really do what they say they're doing. And we have a corner market on trust, where we have the ability to show that trust through a video, which for-profits have to contrive. You would not believe the number of for-profits that pay people out there to blog, even though there's a new FTC ruling that if you're being paid to blog about something, you must acknowledge that you're being paid to blog about it. Or if you are sent a free gift to try, you have to blog that you were sent it in exchange. And of course, no one follows that FTC ruling, but that's going to start happening more. So trust is an issue, but if you already have a trusted name as a nonprofit, then you add that to your video, right? So I mean, it's kind of the snowballing effect, I think, for nonprofits. Do you have any questions? Does this make sense?
Yes.
Just know that the for-profits are looking at this and doing the same thing. They're spending money on it because it works, and you have the opportunity to not spend. Well, you will, because you're going to have human power in there, so that's going to cost your organization. But as far as the resources, right, they're huge. So, okay, number 5.
So that brings to, it's free to do it here in Fayetteville. Did I mention that before? I've been a nonprofit director for several years. Most recently, I'm the director of the Northwest Arkansas Rape Crisis Center, and we plan to use video component for house parties. I don't know if you all have done any house party events, but a way that we have people bring their circle of friends into their own home. We do outreach about our work, and then we're going to feature a video of survivors of sexual assault talking about what the services that they receive from us and what an important difference that made in their lives. Again, we're not going to do any of obviously we wouldn't put a rape clinic exam on a video, but to actually show those stories, those human faces that have been touched by our services. So that's one of the examples of what you can do with video. And if you have anyone in your organization that is a resident of Fayetteville, that can be done for free using the resources here. Prior to my work at the Rape Crisis Center, I was the executive director of Your Media, and I cannot tell you enough about my delight that we live in a city, I live in Fayetteville as well, that the city would put so many resources into making this something that residents can use. But in this particular contract for 2013, there was a concerted effort to make sure that nonprofits also had this as a very strong avenue for them to express their work and reach people in the Fayetteville community about what you do. There are many ways that you can do that here. I'm going to just kind of briefly go over a few of those, but I would definitely recommend that you visit faypublic.tv, FAYPUBLIC.tv, which is Fayetteville Public Access Television website. And of course, you can contact the station at 479-444-3433. It's been a while, 444-3433. One of the coolest things that's happened between last year and this year is the new studio that you're sitting in. We've got new cameras, the control room that you can tour when we're finished here. It is a completely updated professional studio like you would have to pay thousands of dollars to have access to. And there are several opportunities here for you and members of your nonprofit to utilize this studio to present professional video presentations to the community. The great news, and I'll say this before I forget it, anything that you do here, you can get a copy of, and if you produce it yourself, you own the actual rights to it. So let's say you decide to take the classes, you create a video. That video belongs to you. It is not the city's, it is not Fayetteville Public Access Television's. The only stipulation is you have to telecast it at least once on the station. But there's no downside to that. You're getting it telecast to those folks who live in Fayetteville that can watch it, and public access television is streamed live via the internet. So you can send a link to people across the world that says, hey, check out our show on public access. Here's the stream, and here's the time to tune in. And anyone can see it. So getting back to the studio, they've upgraded the studio here, all professional equipment, and they've added a couple of things that I think will be of interest to nonprofits. In addition to taking studio classes, if you yourself or anyone, any of your volunteers or staff, want to come and actually take the studio classes, it's free to do so as long as you live in Fayetteville. You just need to go online and find the schedule or sign up today before you leave or call. And you will actually learn how to use the state-of-the-art cameras, the control room equipment, so that once you have been certified to use those and you've met those qualifications, you can call and schedule the studio at any time and produce your own show from there on out on your own schedule as long as it doesn't conflict. You could even have a series program. And even if you get good enough and you're so inclined, you could have a live television show coming from this very studio that is just for your organization. I don't think you can do that anywhere else in the state of Arkansas that I'm aware of, that nonprofits can just do that. The only thing you can't do with regard to using this television station is you can't sell a product. You can't do a commercial, but as a nonprofit, if you ask for support, you're absolutely willing, it's fine for you to do that. As long as you're promoting your mission and the good work and service that you do in the community, it's free for you to do that.
So the least, the first thing that you can do with the smallest amount of commitment from you is a short take.
That's right.
Right, and those are scheduled.
They are in the studio here. And a short take is anybody can come in and have up to 5 minutes every week to talk about anything you want to. And you can incorporate slides or photos. So if you want to come and talk about an event that you have coming up and give the specifics about it, talk about your mission, they can run photo slides in the background of that particular short take. And short takes are taped here in the studio. I'm hoping it's still the same time that it used to be, and they may have to change this in editing, but on Mondays from 5 to 6 p.m. and Thursdays from 11 to noon. So anyone can come in, tape a short take, talk for 5 minutes about the great work that you do.
But that would be a video that would be owned by the station?
Yes, because that is the station's show.
And that would be linked. You could use the link on our streaming on our webpage. So you could still use that link and send that link to people, but it wouldn't be something that you would own. So that's like the least. I mean, anybody could come in,
Just show up and
just
we'll
show up
take
and
it.
have a little script
Right.
of what you want to say, or have props.
Or have clients or folks that you serve that come in and want to talk about the experience that they had.
And then the next would be taking the classes,
Right.
using the studio,
Mm-hmm.
and then if you wanted, you can actually check out equipment.
Right.
So
that-
you can do off
Right, that's camera classes.
camera class.
Another new thing in studio with regard to this year, 2013 and beyond, is part of taking studio classes is everyone has to come and do a lab. And a lab is every Saturday from 2:30 to 2 to 3:30.
2 to 3:30.
If you want to sign up to be the talent, quote unquote, for a studio lab class, then you basically call and reserve that lab class, and you can come in with your entire show already ready, sit in the studio, and they will tape and film it and edit it, and it will be your show, but it will be done as a teaching tool for studio students. So that's the second.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a longer version than the short takes, but it could be your entire show. Now that would also belong to Public Access Television since their staff is doing it as part of the studio lab. But again, you can link to it, and any show that's done here, you can get a dub for only $5 on a DVD, so then it becomes yours. They can upload it to YouTube. You can easily make it accessible. That's why access is in the name. Everything that's done here is designed to be so accessible. And then you can actually call and hire the staff here to do a very affordable studio production for you. If you don't want to fit into the lab, if you don't want to train your own folks, but you want a studio production, it is a very professional staff here that will make that happen for you. And in fact, every nonprofit is allowed to do one fundraising studio production every year at an affordable rate. The Lions Club has been doing their own telethon here since the beginning, since the early 90s. And they just did it in December. Of course, they have to do all the work to make it happen. They show up, pay a minimal fee, and they do an on-the-air fundraiser. And I believe they made $7,000 to $10,000
It was
on this one.
live.
Live, yeah. And it can go out live. So they're really amazing opportunities, and I encourage you to talk to the folks here about any ideas that you have. But definitely taking advantage of that studio lab to do an hour-long show or 30-minute show would be a great opportunity that wouldn't be too hard to put together.
Good place to start.
Yeah. And with regard to the classes, you can learn field production, which is learn how to use video cameras. And new this year is that they actually have much more user-friendly cameras. You can do the advanced field production, which is a camera similar to what you see on the stand there, but it's handheld. Or you can do a very user-friendly HD camera, which is sort of a high-end camcorder. And they will teach you all the ways to use it, how to get good shots, how to do audio, how to do lighting. And then once you are qualified to use that, you can check it out like a library book for free. You can take it to your events. You can take
You'll film your kids playing after school.
Right.
I mean, that's the kind of emotional stuff that you'd want to show.
You can film your own fundraising idea or a thank you to your funders. And as long as you telecast it on public access television, that video belongs to you. We now have very basic editing equipment too that they can teach you. So you're not, and we also have Final Cut Pro, which is what they do a lot of the professional movies on. So whatever level of interest that you or your volunteers or staff have, they can meet your needs here, teach you how to use the equipment, and you can go out and make your own productions. And then that can be embedded in your website. That can be a YouTube link. Think about I don't know if you ever have to do trainings, but you don't, and they're not too proprietary, you'd be fine for them being shown on television, and you don't have the way to get them to all the folks that need to be trained, take the classes, film your training. You just have to show it on television, make it part of the programming, but then it's yours to own so that you can, again, it's all about meeting your budget needs and the return on your investment, and there's just no better return on investment than what you can get here with the resources that the city provides.
And I think,
just one last thing before I forget. If you have videos currently, anybody who lives in Fayetteville can bring their video here and it will be telecast on public access television. You can request that it be telecast. So if you already have some video product that you want to have seen more, bring it in. You just have to fill out a program request form. leave us a copy, and we'll make sure that it gets on television.
Oh, one of the things that I was going to say as you went down the road of training videos or longer type videos, if you're thinking about having something that you want to try to go more viral with, something that you want to have, a friend of a friend of a friend sent me, I would really encourage you to try to package those in 15 to 30 second bits. And even if you could, I think it's far better with the nature of social media because you don't know which one is going to kind of take off. So I think it's better to have, 4 that are 15-second long that you can use over time and send out once a week, things like that. And there's a lot of strategy out there about what makes good social media in your organization. I would encourage you to not be overwhelmed by it. Start simple. I really think if you have a Twitter account and a Facebook account and you have them linked so that when you post on Twitter, it posts on Facebook, and when you post on Facebook, it posts on Twitter. And then if you really want to just open it up to the world, that's the other thing you can do. And then Facebook is starting to have some advertising opportunities that are similar to Google AdWords, where it's a kind of a bidding process and it's really pennies per click. And that's something I think that you can, we were actually just talking about it for your media. That's something that you could start exploring. And then if you have your videos there, all the ads that pop up on the side of people's pages. And so I think it's just so much more accessible than it's ever been. The idea of getting your word out, it used to be daunting. In 1970, if you wanted to reach something like 2/3 of all women in the United States, all you had to do was put on a 30-second commercial between 7 and 7:15 p.m. on the 3 big stations, and you got like 2/3 of all women in the United States. And now there's just not only a bazillion channels, but because so much of it is social, right? So much of it is out there meant for us to interact with each other that it's easy to jump in. I mean, it's just so much easier to jump in. It's not this huge daunting task. I will tell you though, the first video you send out, it better be decent because you're going to violate that trust, right? So your friends are, you're taking advantage of the friend trust to get them to click on it, and then you send out a cruddy video. So you want to go with something emotional, something very, like the 100,000 patient was huge, right? That was that was easy. Kids are easy, right? Yeah, of course, getting their permission to be filmed, all that kind of stuff. But those kinds of things are easy. They're cute and they show your mission, and they probably bring in money.
And I would also think, depending on your nonprofit, and if you have, say, an after-school program like you've described, that one possibility is if you have staff who's trained here in the studio production, that become a regular after-school program, that the kids could actually come here with that person doing the control room and running the studio and be on a television show as part of their after-school program. To put together a great video retrospective of the 100,000th patient, it's so easy to do. The only thing it costs you is time. And that has become, and I will say that the folks at Fayetteville Public Access Television have really listened to that. And with the changes in the basic courses this year, are really working hard to make it more doable with everyone's busy schedule. That it's easier than ever to do that, and definitely worth the time. Most for-profits that Molly mentioned, every one of those has a marketing department and probably an in-house video and media crew. I'm guessing none of you do. I know that we certainly don't. So having the ability to have that by coming to this station and doing it in the studio or learning how to do it yourself is a huge gift that the city is offering to nonprofits. And it would be our hope as board members of the service provider organization that more nonprofits will take advantage of that, because it truly is a gem here in Fayetteville.